Now I'd like to introduce our featured presenters today. Michael Lepik is an associate professor of civil and environmental engineering in the Stanford Engineering School. He is the faculty director of both the Stanford Center for Sustainable Development and Global Competitiveness and Stanford's new Smart City Research Center in Songdo, South Korea. He is also a senior fellow at Stanford's Woods Institute for the Environment. He studies the multi-scale design, construction, and operation of sustainable and smart-built environments. Mike Lyons is Managing Director of Force 12 Ventures and an adjunct professor of civil and environmental engineering and management science and engineering at Stanford University. He is a serial entrepreneur who has founded over 10 companies, including Integrated Systems, RTI.com, Westlight AI, and Sciatech Inc. Mike has been a general partner at 5 venture capital funds, including a co-founding general partner at Zilka Venture Partners, Cambridge top 5 percentile. He was also a founding adjunct faculty member of the Stanford Engineering Entrepreneurship Program. Mike holds degrees in engineering physics, aeronautics and astronautics, and business administration from Cornell University, Stanford University, and Pepperdine University. Craig Schultz is the Chief Executive Officer of Neoprime Inc., a lead provider of cyber risk reduction software and analytics. He has over 20 years in training and developing products in the areas of massive scale business analytics, enterprise risk management, and national technical platforms. Dr. Schultz was Vice President of Product Development for Risk Management Solutions, helping lead development of the largest global risk platform with over $100 billion in insurance premiums for institutional, corporate, hurricane, terrorism, earthquake, and pandemic exposure. Prior to that, he spent 12 years as a senior physicist leading special modeling and nuclear risk reduction initiatives at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Dr. Schultz received his PhD from MIT in seismology. Benjamin Beverness brings 27 years of broad and progressive experience at applying leading-edge technology to solving the most difficult business challenges. As SAP's Global Vice President for the oil and gas industry, he is responsible for assuring SAP's portfolio of solutions and services are meeting the industry's needs and delivering the value expected by industry executives. He is leading SAP's solution strategy and global marketing for the oil and gas industry. Prior to joining SAP, Beverness served as the CIO of Snohomish County PUD, where he was responsible for all IT operations and cybersecurity. During that role, he was recognized regionally and nationally for his leadership as a CIO and in cybersecurity. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Lepik.
Thanks, Beth. We're really excited at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering to be offering both this webinar and a broader course that we'll talk about a little bit later. Cybersecurity is one of the greatest challenges of the current work environment, and the ways in which cybersecurity affects the physical built world, which is our focus, is one that we think is incredibly important, and that's why we're so excited to offer this. And so, I'd like to turn it over now to Mike Lyons to kind of walk us through the schedule for today's webinar and kick off the content. Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So welcome, everybody, and very happy to have you participating today. And so the focus of today's webinar is to give you a glimpse into what we're going to do in the September course, which we'll explain a bit more detail toward the end of the webinar. Today we'll give you a glimpse into what some of the current attack vectors look like, what the impacts of COVID-19 are, which are, as you'll see, quite significant. And then we'll walk you through the 3 stages of how we've organized this program, which is what do you do to get set up in the pre-attack mitigation phase. And this turns out to be really important because if you do this right, it makes everything else much more straightforward. And if you don't, well, then you have problems. Then we're going to talk about shifting that into what it looks like when you're doing response management and what are the issues associated with that, and then what happens for rapid recovery and what are best practices there. At the end of the webinar, we'll shift over and talk about going deeper into all of these topics and how the 5-session program is going to work in the fall. Then to wrap up, we'll go into a little bit of Q&A and try to answer your questions. So now let's talk about the whole area of pre-attack mitigation. What is the best approach for setting things up so that you have fewer problems later on? And what we're going to do in this program is approach cybersecurity from a different angle than what you used to seeing normally. We're going to use what Gartner calls financial integrated risk management. So what we're going to be looking at here are ways to drive your cybersecurity strategy from a business impact point of view, which is different than the way most folks associate solving the cybersecurity problem by just buying, tools and things from vendors and so on, and saying, hey, we got everything and we are protected. So why is business impact an important way to look at this? And these numbers kind of give you the idea of what the problem is. So as you can see, the spending on cybersecurity solutions is becoming rather absurd. It's getting much, much bigger year over year. And then you would think, okay, with more and more techniques and tools and spending, we should be able to suppress the losses. But that's not what's happening. The cybercrime losses are just getting worse and worse. And so in some ways, one could say that the losses are correlated with increased spending on this. I mean, it certainly looks like that. And this has really now become a multi-trillion-dollar problem. And what it says is that the solutions being deployed don't work. And so that's the obvious conclusion for this. And the question is, why is that? And so I'm going to turn this over now to Craig so he can dive into more details around why this doesn't work. Craig.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And as Mike said, the focus of the course is on the 3 different stages of attack. And losses occur in each of these stages and can occur at different levels. And so really understanding business impact in each of those stages is a primary focus of the course and its curriculum here. And of course, minimizing attacker free time, as we call it, the amount of time that attacker is actually within the system, is a key element in reducing business impact. So if we go forward and kind of look at threats today, the course is not focused on threats in general, but really on what's the current threat profile as of the time of the course. And so as we've all experienced right now, COVID has had a fairly significant impact on everyone from a cyber perspective. Shown here is some of the trend micro statistics for Q1 of this year. And you can see kind of the dramatic increase in how attackers have really dynamically changed to target businesses based on current circumstances. And the key takeaway here is that cyber risk and business impact has not become it's no longer really an annual assessment thing. It's something that actually has to be managed on almost a daily basis. In the COVID case, risks to corporations changed overnight. And it has dynamically changed, and in the attacks that we've seen, dynamically changed every week since the COVID pandemic has started, and it's morphed into different forms. So really the key takeaway here and for the course is how we manage risk around the current profile and do this on an ongoing basis. The second part of the course really looks at how you manage infrastructure If you look at the statistics on the left here, you see from Gartner, kind of the current pre-COVID focus of infrastructure and security. Now, this profile is changing dramatically right now. And what we've seen is a number of things, and I'm sure everyone on the call here is witnessing parts of this, which is really the migration to mobile workforce, people at home, not necessarily in corporate systems, for instance, operating off of personal systems in some cases. The other one that not so many people are familiar with is the mass migration to the cloud. And we've seen, in particular, infrastructure as a service increase an uptick by over 20% just in the last few months as COVID has occurred. And the question is, what are the ramifications from a risk perspective of migrating to the cloud so quickly? In some cases, companies did this just over a period of a week or two, and migrated to a platform that prior to COVID, they were under intense discussions as to the security and risk implications. Combined with this, the fact that, there's loss of revenue, and you may not have as much capital, and so cost now is a much higher focus. And so the course here is really focused not only just on the risk from cyber, but the trade-offs of cost, the trade-offs of business impact, and productivity for the company. It has to operate kind of this changing risk environment. And the course will focus beyond that on some of the emerging malware sets and really be immersive in the current attacks at the time of the course. Two attacks just as examples here that are quite relevant to this discussion. The Baltimore attack, where essentially nation-state reverse-engineered malware called Robinhood was used to attack the city. The city was down for over a month. This was a ransomware attack asking for about $80,000. Baltimore did not pay. The resulting losses then were more around $18 million or so. And there are trade-offs, right, in terms of how you actually respond and manage these events. The other thing to note here is that insurance played a key role in that malware set, and lack of insurance added to more losses. And so not only are we looking at cyber attacks, but in the physical economy, you're really talking about tying, physical systems to insurance, to business continuity and operations, and then back to the cyber impact. The second, as an example, second set of malware, of interest, especially in this energy utility sector, are things such as crash override. And why do I mention this? If you look closely at the cert for this, the U.S. cert for crash override, which has been out for a while, we're seeing what I call almost a new category of malware. That when you look at it and you read the sentence here, you see that U.S. cert is basically saying that current security controls cannot defend against this malware set. And as a result, as we've seen, it's quite effective at getting into OT systems. And so this raises the question about how do you really manage your business risk when you have malware that can very effectively bypass existing control systems, meaning that compliance and other items like that are not effective at reducing the impact. And so a key element of the course will be looking at how to manage against risks and events that compliance and certification really do not have an impact on, which is a reality of today's risk management environment. And so with that, I'll turn it back over here to Mike to go through kind of the basic questions and how we manage these risks within the course.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Now, I think we're going to get here a more on-the-ground sentiment on these questions from Benjamin, because the managing the risk in an effective way really requires that you be able to answer a bunch of questions. Benjamin, you want to take us through some of these questions and opine on them, and whether folks can actually answer them now?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about these questions is that when you're a CIO or you're a CEO or you're someone on a board or even a chief information security officer, I think these are questions that you are constantly being either asked or asking. And your answer today is going to change tomorrow, just as Craig was going through some of those examples. So the Ukraine event happened when I was at my previous role at Sonoma County PD as responsible for cybersecurity, not only for Snowped, but I was also representing all of American Public Power with NERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission for governing the utilities in the U.S. And what was interesting is that, the way I would answer these questions before that event and after changed. And I think that's the point that we're really trying to make here is when you're managing security, it's constantly changing. And you need to look at this and understand, how do I make the right investments? You're going to your board asking for money constantly. You saw the numbers from Mike earlier, billions of dollars are being spent on cybersecurity. How do you know if you're making the right investments? A lot of times companies are focusing on building higher, thicker walls to try to prevent people from coming in, but that's not always where the right investment needs to be made. And I think understanding where your opportunities are, what your threats are, and how you can get the most value out of your investments is really what we would like to help people understand and help people comprehend where those opportunities are for them.
Well, yeah, then a question that comes up certainly in when you're going through this list is why don't C-suite and managing directors of corporations just do what the CISO says and the CIO says and that's it?
Well, I think, we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but I think it's about understanding the ramifications of your decisions, right? It's about understanding where or how you're going to impact your operations with some of those decisions. I think Craig has some good ideas here on starting to look at how we can look at those risks and those financial factors to have a more comprehensive view of how to make the right decisions for your cybersecurity program and your strategy as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely, Benjamin. And if you look at the slides up right now, there's kind of a range of techniques. The more traditional one has been risk scoring and fuel gauge, and we'll cover these in the course. And there's been a steady migration of new technologies, which is very exciting. And so you're seeing kind of the emergence of technologies that are starting to try and get a better idea of what business impact is, from changes in security controls and initiatives within the organization. You have kind of the financial factor analysis, which tries to put a larger bound on what the financial impact is to give general guidance. And even more exciting is kind of the scenario pathway testing, which allows you to actually look at your system and how it responds. That said, these technologies independently really are still not enough because if you just look at them, they really don't look and tie back pathways to the business impact, which is what really needs to be done to understand the risk. And so in this course, not only are we going to focus on these techniques, but we're going to go to the next level and really look at this from kind of the C-suite and board level of how you really start to tie business impact and business decision-making back into pathway analysis and back into kind of forward-looking blueprints and templates for what can happen to the company. And that then allows transparency at the leadership level. So that'll be a major focus of this course, is looking at how you tie business continuity, operations, the physical security elements, and bring these all together in terms of what the impact is on the company, and then be able to demonstrate impact by the investment that you do, and look at return on investment from your security control initiative. So if we go on, I think it'd be good right now to go through essentially a case study, similar to what we'll do in the course, and Benjamin, having been at Snowped, has witnessed this firsthand. So, Benjamin, I'll turn it back to you to kind of talk about, one kind of immersive case study here.
Yes, thanks. So, as part of my work at Snowput, I was always trying to figure out where are our opportunities and where are our weak points. And one of the approaches you can take is have someone do an ethical hack of your company or a pen test of your company. So we actually hired the Air Force and Army National Guard to do that for us. So that was an interesting activity. One of itself had to actually get the governor of the state of Washington to approve this. But what was really interesting is these gentlemen were extremely amazing, talented individuals. They all had day jobs working for major companies like Microsoft and T-Mobile, but they're some of the best trained cybersecurity experts you'll ever find, being trained by the U.S. government as well. And so my team felt, we've been, evaluated and felt we had a very strong cybersecurity program until we went through this exercise. And as you can see here, it's a very simple path, right? They did some phishing of users. That happened within about 20 minutes. They were able to get in and start to get access to our systems. And I'm not going to go through the entire chain here. You can read through it yourself. But fundamentally, we had what we called a smart grid lab, which was set up to mimic our control systems for our production environment of managing the grid there in the Northwest. And that was their target, right? If you played capture the flag, that was the flag they were after. And they were able to get there. And what was very interesting about going through this exercise was, one, the team didn't think it was possible. In fact, they thought I gave those little keys. They felt I gave some of those keys to the hackers to help them through, and I did not. And so we actually had the team that did the hacking and pen test go through step by step how they were able to get from entry all the way into our critical systems. Understanding that was an eye-opener, and I think one of the first things you always have to remember in cybersecurity is there is no way to prevent a 100% cyber attack. I always joke that my personal information has been stolen so many times. I had a security background that was done by the FBI and NSA and those folks and CIA, and all of them, that information was stolen at one point. So I think, that's one thing is we're having conversations with our board, with our leaders. They have to understand there's no way that we can 100% protect the company. It's about making the right investments, and it's also about having the right response plan when we do have those events. And so it was a very interesting experience. There's several white papers written on this that can be shared as well.
That's great.
Thanks, Benjamin. Yeah, and so, from the standpoint of, looking at the attack path, it seems pretty simple. That attack path is quite common between most attacks that Benjamin just walked through. And it seems like it should be pretty simple to pick up on that pathway and protect against it. So the complexity here is that isn't just one pathway. What you're looking at here is a simple corporate structure for a system that's running on the order of about 1,000 computers. So this is a small company, small to medium company. And what you can see here are the access pathways through that system, and the number that even for a small company you have to look at in order to figure out the pathways through. And many of these are potentially viable pathways to take over the entire network, which is the node that's on the far right, essentially the Active Directory system. You add to this what we see with many companies, which is the fact that in order to monitor this, of course, if you get to a global multinational company, you're talking about, a system that's hundreds, if not thousands of times larger than this. And the amount of data, for a large oil and gas company or for, a particular financial company, easily reaches terabytes of data coming through this system per hour. And so trying to monitor this system and all of the different pathways through it is a very difficult and daunting task. And you add to that the false alarms coming off on kind of these critical infrastructure systems, and you can see from a cost-effective point of view, it can be quite difficult. And so how do you actually protect this system? The traditional approach right now that we've seen with companies is to actually, use monitoring systems and of course try to put in security controls in a general way from a compliance standpoint that try to impact this. The issue is that from the shotgun approach, you're monitoring tremendous amounts of information. You need large teams to do this, and this is where cost becomes an issue. If you try to monitor everything, it becomes difficult to actually protect the system. And if you look at the attacker coming through, they obviously have their very specific pathways that they're targeting on, and each attacker, has their own favorite. So they'll be coming from different directions based on the malware that they have. And so one way and to actually mitigate this and to reduce costs is to really look at which of these pathways have the largest business impact on the company and focus in on the pathways that lead to largest damage. And so in this case, you're looking for web threat groups with their malware set, and you're seeing what the most damaging pathway is from this from this group. In this case, you can actually start to now prioritize and look at how you might introduce security controls to impact that. And so in this case, you can actually look at the different nodes, look at the staging that they might do, and the problem becomes much more tractable from a risk management point of view. And so in the end, if you know the pathway and you know the various staging mechanisms, you can then target security controls in the physical security area against these specific high damage pathways. This is really integrating kind of the concept of risk management with how you implement security controls. And when costs become, the critical driving factor, being able to prioritize in this manner becomes absolutely crucial, to how you manage the system. And so this is really at the core of business impact modeling and how that can reduce costs and also at the same time give you a good understanding of what the final business impact is on the company so that C-suite and board members have transparency into that effect. So if we go beyond that, I'm going to turn this back over, but now that you kind of understand how risk prioritization can help in managing, highly complex systems like cyber access control and other things like that. I'll turn it back over now to kind of the view that C-suite and board members can get if you start to position risk analysis in this manner.
Yeah, so it was very interesting because of all the dynamics that Craig was just talking about, and your executive team is going off to conferences, and in the oil and gas industry, utility industry, cybersecurity is one of the top topics that are talked about. And they come back and they start asking you all these questions. How would we know we're making the right investments, et cetera? And so it was really good working with the team to come up with a way to look at this and hopefully a simple way to make the right decisions. And if you look at this chart on the left-hand side here, right, really to our point of understanding the business impact. And when I sat down with our board, I said, I really want to talk about two things with you when I talk about cybersecurity. The first is the probability of an attack, and the second is the impact of that attack. And my goal in everything we do from an IT perspective or security perspective should be focusing on those two numbers. So be able to display to them here's what our plan is going to be. So the controls are across the bottom. We had not only regulatory requirements coming out of the federal government, but we also had the assessment done by the Neoprime solution here. And then we also had other input from our hacking pen testing that we did with the National Guard. All of those. So I had all this information, and I needed a way to figure out how do I make the right steps? How do I make those right investments? Where do I get the most bang for my buck? Where should I start looking to maybe apply insurance, which wasn't part of our risk mitigation plan at the time? So if you look at this, across the top, you have the risk reduction numbers, a percentage of the risk reduction number. Then you have the controls across the bottom. So if you look at asset DLP as an example, I get the most bang for my buck because I'm going to get the largest percentage of decrease in, or one of the larger percentage of decreases in the 3-year reduction. But also I see a overall reduction of my overall risk profile by 15% as well. So not only am I reducing my cost, but also reducing my risk profile as a whole. So that made it very easy for me to go into the board and say, hey, we're going to go off and spend X dollars. We're going to implement these controls, and then implement that and be able to then show value back to them from a risk reduction perspective.
Perfect, Benjamin. And then in addition to that, going back to the questions, Benjamin, that you introduced kind of at the beginning, we know it's challenging to answer those questions, such as what is the top control that most reduces my business impact, from a cyber perspective. And so, using tools like this, you actually can, take the next step, and now you have the answer to that question at some level, and it gives you transparency. Because in this case, you can actually say, here's the top control measure that actually reduces my risk of loss. And when you start doing this, it kind of forces one to, think in a structured way, because when you break down the analytics, at the higher level of the company, it forces you to actually look at your recurrence period. So in this case, you see that asset DLP is the most impactful control for your recurring losses over 3 years. So on average, over the next 3 years, asset DLP will reduce my risk of loss the most as a company. Now, interestingly enough, if you go here and look at your 20-year recurring loss, think of this like, your 20-year hurricane recurrence if you're in New Orleans. But your 20-year recurrence loss, if you click on that and actually go through and start to look at it, what you see is these controls shift around many times in dramatic ways. And so if you're trying to mitigate your longer-term 20-year loss, it's very different controls, and those are typically your nation-state controls, whereas you see the 3-year loss down below here is primarily criminal organizations. They're the ones who are going to impact the 3-year loss. So it forces you to start looking at, what are you trying to mitigate with the security control? And then finally, it does give you a way to start looking at insurance, because the residual risk that's left after implementing these controls then gives you a target, a quantitative goal and target in terms of risk transfer. So so that's risk minimization. And obviously, that's the loss reduction shown in green here. But there are many other aspects that companies are faced with, one obviously being cost reduction. When you're actually trying to figure out the initiatives and the controls that you implement, how much you spend on cybersecurity for that year. And so I'm going to turn this over to Benjamin to talk a little more about the breadth of trade-offs and how you approach this.
Yeah, I'm just going to use an analogy just to kind of clarify the point we're trying to make. So we talked a lot about loss reduction and cost. And if you just take a company like Nordstrom, who is very both employee-focused as well as customer-focused, and if you think if they added some security features to their overall program, because they have loss reduction, right? People are stealing from them on a constant basis. If they all of a sudden started to having to pat you down as a customer every time you left the store, right, my customer experience would go way down. My employee experience of having to do that would probably go way down. And the cost for the company would go way up. So there's got to be a good balance between the cost, the corporate productivity, your operations, and the impact on your employees getting their jobs done. And balancing that all out is very interesting. We did this with our when our generation facilities had to be upgraded to meet NERC CIPS compliance. We had to go out and help them understand, and then help us understand as well, how do we reduce the impact on their operations, but make sure we put in the right controls in place to keep the facility secure. So it's a balancing act to try to manage this across those dynamics.
Thanks, Benjamin. That's a great example. And so now one of the things that you need to take care of here is the whole structuring of corporate security roles and responsibilities. Benjamin touched on some of this material over the last few minutes. Well, one of the things that many operations don't do well is have a really fully articulated playbook about, how this is going to work and, who's responsible for what. And in each stage of the operation, pre-mitigating what's going to happen, really understanding the whole playbook, who's responsible for controlling the security, for communicating, for making these business decisions that affect the business continuity and the cost for the company going forward. This needs to be really carefully laid out, and we're going to dive into that material even more later. Now, with respect to that, we need to focus, as you can see, when you go back to the financial integrated risk management approach to controlling the whole security posture of the company. It's really about these top two things: the corporate return on investment, a systems approach to what it's going to cost to actually make the company secure and to sustain operations. And the whole thing needs to be business impact driven, whereas in many cases right now, it is not done that way. It's more of a technology-oriented approach to controlling security, and what is the latest hot product or bell and whistle or something that has some compelling technology advantage that says, yeah, we can detect everything. And I think, as you've already seen, that's not really possible. These days, with AI, ML-driven solutions, the attackers are gaining even more advantages because they're using those technologies against us. And yeah, those technologies for sure are being used to advance cybersecurity products, but the attackers are also using them, and in some cases more effectively than the defenders. And so this can't just be driven by technology. That's not going to work. So the emphasis is corporate ROI and business impact. That's the approach that we're taking in this program. So one thing we can look at is, in the next phase, is what happens when we're responding to an attack that's happened, very much like what Benjamin laid out a little bit earlier. And one of the key elements of this is crisis communication. We're going to have extensive sessions on crisis communication, and it's very much making sense of what happened. Because as it says, if we can't make sense of actually what happened, then someone else is going to make sense of it. And one of the key things here that distinguishes cyber response from, say, dealing with natural disasters like hurricanes, earthquakes, and so on, as Craig mentioned earlier, is that those events don't do anything differently depending upon what we do. They're just what they are. Whereas in cyber attacks, the behavior of the attackers is heavily driven by what we do. And they're paying attention to how we communicate as well. And this also brings in the notion of, oh yeah, we're just compliance driven. That's all we do. And if the attackers know how we're complying with NIST and other standards, this is tremendous information for them, and dramatically, in some cases, drives what they do to attack us. And our behavior is going to drive what they do next, because these attacks, as you saw earlier, can go on for quite some time. This is not just a one point in time kind of event. Okay? And the crisis communication strategy has to think about all of those elements. And there are certain roles and responsibilities, and who communicates what and when and how is really critically necessary to manage this properly. Now, if we shift to the recovery part of this, I'm going to turn that over to Craig to talk about some of the elements we need to address when we're recovering.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. And building on some of Mike's comments, recovery is similar in some ways to response, but what's quite interesting here is when you move and extend beyond compliance to business impact-driven management, a couple things really stand out in terms of reducing losses to the business as a whole. Just to highlight a few here, basically, the removal of malware is something that typically leads to heavy loss with companies. The Lansing, Michigan case where the utility there in Michigan was taken down, they tried to rebuild their systems multiple times. The malware was not entirely removed, and as a result, they had extreme costs and eventually had to replace most of their systems across the entire corporation. So quite quickly, you see that understanding when malware and verifying that malware is removed becomes a critical business loss issue. The second item I'll mention, just to highlight this, is the changing threat landscape. You saw the attack graphs that I showed earlier. Those are actually from an offensive attack tool. And so you can see the mapping that group already has of the system that they attack. They have a very good idea, in some cases better than the security personnel themselves in the company. And so this threat is now is in a position to stage against the company in the future. So really reevaluating what your threat profile is, given that the attack just occurred, and looking forward at that to understand it becomes critical in reducing loss. The final one I'll mention, coming back to Baltimore, is really taking a more careful quantitative financial look at your insurance and really being able to assure shareholders and stakeholders that your insurance does cover the types of attacks that you're going to see, and really taking a relook at that to make sure that the company has proper insurance and risk or other risk transfer mechanisms in place. So as you can see, looking at this from the business impact point of view really changes some of the items as a company that you might focus on in addition to compliance, not instead of, but in addition to compliance, to really secure the physical as well as the other digital systems that you're working with.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So we can get some key takeaways now and kind of summarize the things we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes. Is that the key thesis here is that this no limit spending against cyber threats really doesn't work anymore. The spending and the selection of controls that are needed is very situationally dependent. It's path dependent, and it depends on what's going on in the threat environment. And this is, as Craig pointed out, something that actually needs to be tracked, almost daily to be really, really effective. Okay, and it's also clear that transparency is necessary in communication. Not only so that the C-suite can properly control the risk in the company, but that we're compliant, on the regulatory side, and those regulatory requirements are getting tighter and stiffer, as time goes on, and the penalties for failure to do this properly are becoming more severe. We need blueprints and playbooks for how this needs to be handled and communicated, and the key issue here is that we need to keep coming back to this notion of business impact, and that compliance per se isn't really the solution. And in fact, in many instances, it's fairly straightforward to show that being fully compliant is actually not correlated with risk of loss. And that's certainly a disturbing situation for sure. So now what I'd like to do is shift over and in the remaining few minutes here, just really quickly talk about what we're going to do in the 20-hour program in September. And the focus or the attendance for this program is really driven around C-suites, board of directors, senior managers, and not per se CISOs or people who are deep in the technology for how they're actually going to implement the solutions. But this is more of a higher level set of folks that need to understand how to control the business risk, because that's going to be the principal focus. And what we're going to do is give a very real world scenario-based education here, where we're actually dealing with something that replicates what they might see in real life. And the key point here is going to be, how do I know when I've spent enough money? When am I done, or what is my process going to look like here? Because my budgets are not going to be unlimited, and I've got to pay attention to the ROI. And so we're going to be, as we said, very immersive in this program, and we're going to look at a kind of a fictitious Stanford energy company in this program, and the networks for that company are going to be quite elaborate. We're going to be using large network emulations to illustrate the various points and the risk of loss and the loss pathways in the system. And we'll also use that to drive the pre-attack mitigation strategies. What are we doing to get everything set up? And then we'll go through some actual attacks that have happened to utilities and other physical type systems to see what they actually look like, and show how all of that is communicated to the C-suite. And the C-suite will need to be able to respond to those things and do crisis communication and all of that sort of thing. And we'll be practicing this throughout the course so that we understand actually what it looks like and how to do it. Very important items. And then we're going to look at trends. And as Craig mentioned earlier, the attacks we'll be looking at will be trending, very typical around the time of when we deliver the program. So they're going to be the latest things, things that you may not have seen before. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that really plays out. We'll bring in, especially in our crisis communication part of the program, which is going to be handled by Steve Callender from the Stanford Business School. He's an expert in this area, and we'll tie that out to the latest SEC regulations. And you can see here what the participant focus and the concept is going to be. I think we've covered many of those things, and I want to leave a little time here left for Q&A and discussion. So again, the key point of the program, this is not high-level compliance. This is not about checking which NIST boxes are important or any of that sort of thing. We're going to go through 3 stages throughout the program: the pre-attack, the response, and the recovery. And this is going to be done in a very real-world way, where teams will form up in the course and take responsibility for these various aspects of the response. So communication is going to be key in the program. and how do you do it, and how do you talk to it. So it's all going to be virtual. We're going to do 5 sessions early September for 4 hours a day. We will pace it properly so that we don't get burned out, on screens, because now that we've been teaching things virtually, we're very familiar with what that process looks like and how it works. And you can see the dates there. And one of the things we're going to ask people to do is to, if they can, provide anonymized versions of things they've seen, attacks, situations, things of that nature, that they can contribute, so that we'll build a database at Stanford of anonymized information, so that this can help others educate themselves around, gee, what did somebody else see? And what do I have to be thinking about? And this also provides a way for us to do more directed research at Stanford around these anonymized kind of attacks. This will be extremely valuable. The program will offer a Stanford Certificate of Completion, very important, and it's, of course, a significant amount of effort to go through the program, but highly worthwhile. So here's some information on how to sign up. And Beth, did you want to say anything about these links?
No, if you don't have time to, other than if you don't have time to write this down, if you do go to online.stanford.edu and put in cybersecurity, this is one of the courses that will come up, and you should be able to find it there.
And also, the recording of this webinar will also be on that sign-up site as well, for anybody that wants to view any parts of it again, or show it to anyone else.
All right. Mike, Ben, and Craig, great job. The takeaways that you had listed there, I think were really spot on. A few questions that are sort of grouped into some various areas for all of you. A question came in, earlier in the webinar, you had listed a few of the pre-attack mitigation strategies, and specifically this person is saying, I'm already overloaded by COVID-19 response stuff. What are the top 1 or 2 things I should focus on right now, if you were going to say from each of you, top 1 thing that they should do to start thinking about this?
So this is Craig. I can start off. So on the technical side, it does depend upon how you're set up and what the impact on the company's been. But some of the things that we've seen, that are high loss mechanisms, are if you have migrated significant, resources to the cloud, identity access management and data leakage has become kind of a core issue there, and as an area in terms of how you actually access that system and what the protections are on that system. And the second one is how you're actually monitoring on the remote side when you have a mobile workforce. And so again, it's kind of dependent on your situation, but these are a couple of trends that seem to be areas of high loss and good areas to focus on.
Okay. Ben, Mike, what would you say the first 1 or 2 things?
Yeah, so I think for me, response is, no matter what controls you have in place and no matter where you're making your investments, always having a solid response plan and exercising that response plan on a regular basis. I don't think you can ever lose from that investment. So I think that's an area where I encourage all companies to be focusing on how will they respond and continuously updating that based on their profile.
Okay. Mike Lyons, anything different than what Craig and Ben have said?
Well, I would only add that a lot of classic problems are still sitting out there. We did some key demonstrations of risk of loss for some large auditors last year, and in a 20,000 machine network that was set up that had some misconfigurations in it. Advanced APT attack vectors were able to take this network down very, very quickly. And misconfigured systems and not checking this kind of stuff on a regular basis.
So for specifically, a question came in for Craig. You had talked about Robinhood and crash override. What do you think is coming next? Is it going to be a variant of one of these, or is it going to be something completely different that we haven't seen?
So that's a great question, and I would say you've got to watch out for both. We will see variants almost certainly of what exists today as people fine-tune it, reverse engineering, kind of various groups actually start to distribute it as kind of what I call standard malware that they sell, within the criminal infrastructure. At the same time, Robinhood was a reverse engineered nation-state code. And so we do keep a very close eye on what's been stolen. And not all of the stolen malware on the nation-state side yet has been reverse engineered. And so what you're seeing is as they reverse engineer different components of that, you're seeing the effect of it. And so I think you need to look at both, the commercialization on the criminal side and the fine-tuning and adjustment of existing malware. And at the same time, it's an and. You need to be looking at, what's the likelihood that certain nation-state malware will be reverse engineered in the coming year. And we, look very closely at that to understand what the impact of that will be once it is reverse engineered. So it's
and I imagine that's probably
that
we'll go into in a lot more depth in the bigger course.
Absolutely.
So for Ben and Mike Lyons, and this will be the final question as we wrap up the webinar, what's the most difficult part of cybersecurity for a board member or CEO to understand? And what have you found to be the best ways to try to educate them on that? I mean, these are complex things and potentially leaders that aren't experts in this area. So what are those pieces that are super difficult for them to understand, and any thoughts on how to help them understand it?
No, that's an excellent question. I think it's depending on your board. I had 4 board members on our board and our CEO. Our CEO understood cybersecurity very well just because him and I had regular conversations about it all the time. One of my board members understood it fairly well because they're a little bit more technically adept than maybe the others were. The other ones, though, weren't necessarily as technically adept, and so just trying to help them understand and using very basic examples and that related back to their personal lives, right? Securing their personal information. When my information was stolen, from the federal government, sharing that with them and helping them understand that the complexity of what this means and impacts to our customers as a utility at the time as well. So I think try to keep it as simple as possible, and that's why when I was communicating back to our board, I said there's only 2 numbers I want you guys to focus on, which is the probability of attack and what the cost of that attack would be. That way you can just judge up and down the impact and risk to the company as a whole. And so I try to keep it as simple as possible, I think, is my best message.
And I also like the idea of trying to relate it to personal security, because that's something we've all sort of been exposed to a little bit, and say, look, we're going to have to take this and take it to the next level. Lyons, any last quick comment on that, or is that good?
Well, we're out of time, but as soon as the directors, even the non-technical ones, understand that 85% of the web traffic is on the dark web, and you can buy all of Ben's information there, that gets their attention.
Great. All right. Well, I just want to say thanks to all 3 of you for helping us with this webinar today, and I'll turn it back to Beth Valente.
Yes, again, thank you to Mike, Craig, Benjamin, and also Mike Lepek for helping with the questions here at the end and just for this very informative presentation. Again, thank you to everybody who joined us today. We appreciate you joining us. As a reminder, you'll receive a link to the recording of the webinar in about a week. Thank you very much.